you so much for joining us. My name is Jessica Dean, and I'm with AIM Transportation Solutions. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of today's session, and then we'll get right into all the fun stuff. So many of you are not first-time attendees to an AIM webinar. We're pleased to say we've gained a pretty nice following for our series. We host around 10 webinars a year and have been doing this for about 3 odd years. These webinars are a way in which we support our customers, but we invite not only our customers, but anyone to join who would like to join. So thank you for being here today, customers and non-customers alike. At AIM, we're in the business of providing transportation solutions, be it in the form of leased equipment, dedicated contract carriage, maintenance programs, freight brokerage, the list goes on and on. But we support our customers beyond just our service offerings. We operate our own fleet of vehicles, so we know what you're up against. We actually currently maintain over 11,000 vehicles. About 400 of those are in our integrated fleet, and we also employ the drivers that operate them. So we share a lot of the same struggles that our customers have, and we want to share our resources and the knowledge of the experts both employed at AIM and that we have partnered with freely with our customers and beyond. With that being said, today we're here to talk about a safety solution we've implemented in our integrated fleet and seen great success with. In-cab video and the supporting app that Netradyne provides has been something that AIM has adopted and really had great success with. We're going to have Kahn, the president of Netradyne, talk to us about what the Netradyne system provides, and then we're going to have AIM's vice president of safety, Bourque, talk to us about how this has worked for AIM. We have a video clip from one of AIM's drivers speaking firsthand about what it's like for him using the Netradyne system in his cab as he drives. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic over to Kahn to get us started. Hi, Adam. The floor is yours when you're ready for it.
Thanks, Jessica. Hey, hello, everyone. And thank you for allowing us to spend some time with you, sharing a couple really exciting concepts that we have around video telematics. Video telematics is not new. I've been in the safety space of commercial transportation for 25 plus years, and the last 10 or 12 years of my career has been very focused on video telematics. So it's not a new topic, but I would suggest that the category has started to change. And like any kind of technology, any kind of litigious environment, solutions change and they continue to evolve. And one of the concepts that, as Ron and I were getting together to talk about this concept, this topic was, what is the big change in video telematics and safety? And so I labeled my portion ditch the stick. And I really lay into the carrot versus the stick mentality of how to motivate or how to coach drivers. Historically, safety systems have been almost 100% focused on the stick. This is what you did wrong. This is why you're a lousy driver. Maybe I'm going to tell you who your 10 worst drivers are so you can get them out of your fleet. Well, I would actually suggest that maybe it's not as effective as it could be. The right kind of language should be, here's your 10 best drivers. Why don't you have the rest of your driving community learn from those drivers? And let's promote and highlight the good performance that's happening. So if you can follow along in my conversation, I'm going to really try to follow the theme of ditching the stick. And over the lifetime of my career, our marketing department just published this. We have an active campaign going out, and I stole this from him, where it says, the way we've been taught to improve driver performance and fleet safety is perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists. If you think about a video telematics or a telematics product or your laptop or your car that you had 10, 15 years ago versus what you have today, systems continue to evolve and they continue to adapt to the changing environment. And that's exactly what video telematics did. In fact, the system that we are talking about here there is a proven scientific method to improve driver performance through positive reinforcement. And that's exactly what this system really focuses on. It looks at not only the problematic issues, but highlights the good driving. And that changes the conversation and it creates more balance. So I do want to talk a little bit about the science, because although, we all get up and say, hey, you should handshake and you should tell drivers they're doing a good job, there's a lot of background science behind it. And my first experience, and when I was trying to describe this to somebody, I grew up, my father worked for Ford Heavy Truck for 35 years. And so I have cardboard boxes of magazines from the 70s, the 80s, probably the late 60s. And I pulled one of the magazines recently, and I looked at it. And I think the cover was 1984. The top issues were driver shortage and fatalities. Fast forward 30, 40 years, we continue to have our top issues of driver shortage and fatalities. What I'm suggesting is that maybe that the way that we've approached motivating and changing safety might be more beneficial about leaning into the carrot and not the stick. So there is some science, lots of work with some a particular type of study called operant conditioning. It was generated by B.F. Skinner. But the piece that I really liked from his research was you want to reward the behavior you want versus punishing the behavior you don't want. And the study that in the operant conditioning theory talks about actions that are followed by reinforcement will be strengthened and more likely to occur again in the future. So the attaboy goes a lot better, a lot further than any other kind of comments. I further looked at some research. 1971 is quite a, that's just not quite as old as I am, but it's aged. And someone could say, well, 1971, that's 50 years ago. Well, how about today? So some of the research I looked at today was wrapped around in the Harvard Business Review. They've done a couple articles on this, but they really talk about the impact of employee engagement. And I'm going to read the quote from Jim Harder from Gallup Research. And this quote was generated after interviewing 1.5 million of respondents of a survey they did about employee engagement. Engaged employees are more attentive and vigilant. They look out for the needs of their coworkers and the overall enterprise because they personally own the result of their work and that of the organization. That's a very powerful statement that you want to get to, and as you work to engage drivers. And I would say when you engage drivers in a positive way, two statistics really stuck out to me in this study. One is almost a 50% reduction in related safety incidents, right? People are more involved, they're more aware, therefore losing focus it becomes a rarer occurrence. And the second one is employees that are engaged want to stay with that company, right? So a 65% reduction in employee turnover. These are really critical stats for exactly what we're trying to do. Keep the good drivers we have, keep the drivers happy, keep them engaged.
Hey, Adam, I think
yes.
our slides on our end aren't advancing.
All right.
I think you might be sharing the wrong screen.
Let me try it again. How about now? Do you see the triangle?
Perfect.
All right. Now I got to figure out how to advance. Here we go. All right. So in terms of, one other scientific piece, if you ever looked into safety research, you'll see something called the Heinrich Triangle. And the Heinrich Triangle, also very good research wrapped around occupational safety occurrences. And the premise here is that you want to have people do less unsafe acts. Like, as an example, please drive distracted, please drive, being less distracted. Instead of what Ron and I are starting to advocate towards is that instead of asking people to do less unsafe acts, let's promote safe acts, right? So let's have visibility into where the driver has situational good performance or durational good performance, or quite frankly, just as basic as the driver is doing what you've asked them to do in a safe manner. Those types of driving behaviors start to allow for small corrections to happen. Small corrections eliminate bigger issues that happen later on. So in this case here, a lot of the science that we're talking about is behind the scenes about promoting good driver performance. So why positive recognition matters, and I stole from another presentation that I did recently internally, And we were talking about any good story starts with the villain, right? So if we're going to talk about a safety story, let's introduce the villain. Now, the first three villains on this slide are probably, you see them in movies, Hannibal, Dr. Evil, the Joker, but I might introduce another villain, and we're going to talk about Chuck. Now, this might not be the same Chuck, but Chuck is the guy who's on the billboard, right? Who's now advocating to, if you got hit by a truck, no matter what, I'm going to get you some money. I'm going to prove that that fleet is negligent and you're going to get paid. I will tell you that the benefit proposition, the best way to offset this attack that's happening by these plaintiff attorneys is to have a positive story, is to create a positive story that's based on positive activities. And what that allows you to do is start telling your story in your words, right? So if you're waiting for someone to tell your safety story while you're in court, you're probably already losing. But if you're ahead of it and you're promoting the relationship with your drivers and you're talking about the good driving moments that your drivers have, that's creating a brand. Your brand is positive safety. And then what I might also suggest is that earlier on, I talked about the way that we were trained for safety management no longer exists. The new ask, and Ron will talk about this, is to increase the frequency of conversation with the drivers, right? It's very hard to do if you rely only on a face-to-face model, right? So sharing information and extending digital conversations about performance is really important. And that's where technology today starts to assist. It helps with talking with the driver minute by minute, hour by hour, week by week in an automated fashion. And if you need to pull them into the office, you can do that. But it's not the only way that you can have a conversation. A great quote from one of our internal customers, and I really like this quote because they've committed towards the positive aspects of driver performance, right? So video evidence has helped Stewart Transport coach drivers because we utilize a balanced approach. Manager starts by focusing on the positive aspects of driver performance before addressing concerns. So they start every conversation with, here's what you're doing right. And historically, that's very hard to get because most systems only tell you what you're doing wrong and assume that in the absence of bad behavior equals good behavior. Now, what Ron and I are talking about here is now you have the data of good behavior that, you feel confident about us sharing that. So when we think about what's changed, one of the things that's changed is visibility to the entire driving day. So I asked myself, how many minutes, do drivers really drive every day? Because I wanted to kind of get a sense for how much information or how much visibility are we really having. So a driver that drives 100,000 miles per year, and you can see my equation up here, 100 times divided by 12, divided by 22, averaging 45 miles per hour. It's about 500 minutes per day. So one of the things that we have is now we can plot that and say within those 500 minutes a day, and if you look at the pie chart on the right-hand side, this is the information that Ron and I are talking about, right? Now we have visibility into what's called a green minute, the percentage of time that the fleet, that your drivers are doing exactly what they should be doing. By the way, Ron, I looked at the stats for AIM. The AIM fleet is right at 75%, right? So it's a big chunk of drivers. The perception are drivers are always bad drivers. They're rogue. And it's not the case, right? So this is a great stat to be able to tell your story. Our fleet, green minutes, we have confirmed good driving. Now, the pie chart on the left is kind of what started in the industry, right? Where a little bit of information was shared. But as you can see, it's really just a little teeny bit of information. So when I focus on this slide to the right, and Ron will talk about this later, the next trick is how do you get that information to the driver that they can self-coach, they can self-manage. At any one point in time, I know what my score is. I know the type of driving that's pulling my score up, and I know the type of driving that's pulling my score down. So the driver doesn't have to wait to the end of the month for a face-to-face conversation. After they get done with their sandwich for lunch, they can log into their app and say, oh, it looks like my score has dropped because I'm speeding. Okay, the next 4 hours, I'm going to try to drive a little softer and see my score go up. So it's instant feedback and visibility, which is really important of the entire driving day. So talking about carrot and the stick, there are some really fantastic driving events that we capture. And there's two really big pieces. And we talked about operating conditioning, about rewarding and the behavior you want. So one of the driving aspects that we have is called a driver star. And the first one is a situational driver star. So you're driving on the road, a vehicle cuts you off and creates a risky following distance. Your driver comes off the throttle and creates space. Anytime where I can write a formula that says the driver's proactively creating safe space, that's something that we want to promote, right? So move, the merging of the highway, of someone cuts you off, or Scott's law, which is there's an emergency vehicle on the shoulder of the road and you move over a lane and you create space. All of these are treated as bonuses to the driver score and really register as great promotional pieces to share with other drivers. The other type of driver star that's out there that we're utilizing is something called a durational driver star, or streaks. So in the right hand image there, we start to look at drivers who have consecutive good driving performance moments. So the first one is looking at full stops, 75 stops in a row, right? It creates a habit, right? So, and you get rewarded for it. Other types of durational driver stars that we're talking about are following distance, having a good following distance, consecutive minutes, or speed, traveling at speed or below. When we looked at our top 15 customers, I compare driver stars against severe hard braking events as a new KPI. Our top 15 customers and I did the study last fall, were about a 10x to 1 driver star to severe hard braking event. So now you have, again, if I'm going to start a conversation, I have 10 times more data to start that conversation. The interesting piece is AIM drivers, and I looked at the last 30 days, and the metric is actually higher than that, right? So the benchmark against, a larger set, we see, the community that Ron and I are working with about being much higher than that. So it's right in line with that, that great ratios. The next comment the quote that I have here, which I think is interesting, is from another customer of ours, and she's in the same space where it's important to stay disciplined with coaching, build relationships with drivers, and provide positive recognition. It's like a bank account. You can't make a withdrawal unless you have sufficient deposit. This is a great statement about the approach, right? It's how many attaboys can you line up, that you're actually crediting against the driver. There are different KPIs, and Ron is going to show you very specific examples of this. But I would tell you that the new operating performance indicators are different than what they used to be. It's not number of alerts, but what is the average fleet following distance? What is the percentage of time that we're distraction-free driving, right? So you want to promote that positive activity. What is the stop sign compliance? And that 98.5 is nothing compared to what Ron will show in a slide here, because the numbers are off the charts in his presentation. There are some tools as we extending information out to the drivers. The ability of frictionless in-cab driving or self-coaching is another path where, as you share information, you start to automate information with the drivers. This is a good example of a driver who has a phone in hand. The system registers the alert, but instead of waiting a couple of days or a couple of weeks to go talk to the driver, it actually plays an in-cab notification and asks the driver just to put down the phone. So this is really what the cycle you want, right? Act now, talk later. Within 11 seconds, the driver picked up their phone and they put down the phone, based on an automated response. You can always talk, the next day, the next week about it, but you really want to solve for the issue immediately. And when you start having, I call it more context into the conversations, your conversations with drivers change. So a legacy coaching session might have looked like this. I'm sitting down with Ron. I say, Ron, you drove for 8 hours. You had 4 heartbreaking events and 2 stop signs. You need to do better. Well, Ron doesn't get anything out of that conversation. He feels kind of lousy because I just highlighted 6 driving moments that happened over 480 minutes of driving, right? He feels underappreciated. The new conversations that are happening, and really all the information's there, is, hey, you drove 8 hours. I know 92% of the time you were awesome. You did exactly what we wanted you to do. You had 4 heartbreaking events, but 2 of them, you stomped the brake because someone jumped in front of your van truck. Instead of hitting them, you made a proactive maneuver. And although you had 2 stop signs, your stop sign compliance was 97%. So you can see how the conversations can start to change almost on the same set of data, but you're leaning into the positive. Couple customer experiences. We do have a very large last mile carrier. Interesting where they've started to produce and do the statistics around accidents decreasing, stop sign violations, driving without a seatbelt, distracted driving. All these indicators have gone down. And what happens is once you put a camera in the system, you kind of get used to it, but then you forget. And the key to a good program, and I know Ron will talk about this next, is having a safety technology and then reinforcing it is really where the results happen. You do, and if you reinforce the results with positivity, they actually have a higher level of delivery. So here's 2 examples. This particular fleet, you can see the green bounding box. They were having some issue with severe hard braking. The fleet turned on the incab notifications. It's a frictionless incab notification. The driver says, please stop. You didn't go through the stop sign. Please stop next time. You can see this nice decrease that happened from April to May, where almost 50% of the alerts went away just by asking the driver, very kind way, very frictionless way to adjust. Again, it's how do you engage the drivers in a positive way versus a negative way. The other statistic, which I think was really interesting, and we talked about driver stars, is the correlation of good driving and recognition to reduction in risk. So the green mass is really accumulated, weekly totals of drivers achieving the driver star streak. The red line is the tracking of severe hard braking or severe stop sign alerts. So you can see as people feel good about their results, the risk is actually going away. So four key takeaways, and then I want Ron to really dig into the specifics. But 4 things to take away about ditching the stick. Positive recognition is driven from visibility and context, right? If you have to guess or you have to fill in the blanks, that's harder to do. Negative words have negative energy. Practice balance, right? So as you talk to a driver, find the good in their day, start with that, and then coach. Acknowledgement and envy are very powerful tools. Ron and I were talking earlier today, and I said, the example of how to use envy in your fleet, you have 50 drivers, and historically you would pull 50 drivers in and you would pull aside 5 and you'd say, you 5 really need to shape up or I can't invite you to the next meeting. That's one way to do it, because then the other 45 drivers stay away from those 5 drivers, and now they're on Misfit Island. The other way to use envy as your tool, you have the same 50 drivers. I know I have 5 bad drivers in my fleet. Everyone knows that. That's easy. But I'm going to pull the 5 drivers that are my best drivers, and I'm going to create envy. I'm going to give them a hoodie, a Starbucks card, a certificate, a patch for their uniform. It doesn't have to cost a lot, because the other 45 people in that audience are going, 1, I want to figure out what they're doing right, and 2, I know I'm a better driver. I want to be on stage next month. And then finally, take the time to know what is working versus not working, right? So, as you install and deploy a program, there are certain things that you want to, if you got a lot of energy and momentum on something, lean into it, because that means other drivers are going to be accepting of it. So Ron, I know you have great slides queued up and ready to go. I'm going to pass the baton over to you, and I'm going to stop sharing and let you.
Appreciate that, Adam. Thank you very much. One thing that I wanted to say before I get started into my slides, or as I'm pulling those up, one of the things that's not part of our presentation is envy. And we're utilizing the concept with pretty good results in a monthly contest that we're doing. Of our top group of drivers, the guys that are getting perfect scores every week, we're doing a little drawing. And for those of you out there, you can go to YouTube and look for our channel and look for the playlist The Winner Is, and you'll see our little weekly drawings. And we announce the names of our drivers who've been entered into the drawing, and who've been, pulled out and have won a little prize. And it's some driver reward points through our retention system and our reward system. Drivers can get, AIM apparel. And, that's one of the things that one of our drivers is going to mention in a little video clip that we're going to play, that he got some points for that. And we're doing that every week with some positive reinforcement. We're building a little envy, and it's really about building anticipation in the rest of the fleet to get them to want their cameras to be installed. We're about 50% implemented right now. So I'm building excitement in the rest of the group by doing these drawings now to try to help really grease the wheels to get that going well when we get started with them.
I just want to mention, if you want to see an example of how we run this program, we air these videos every week on our Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn pages. So if you follow us on social media, you can see how they're run. And I see Joelle actually just shared one of the videos in the chat function too. So if you want to pull up that link and save it and view it after the presentation, you can kind of see exactly what Ron was speaking of. Sorry, Ron.
Yeah, they're just little 2-minute videos, just where we read off the winners' names and talk about what we're going to incent the following week. So,
yeah, you are. And a lot of drivers really like that. I mean, they can tag themselves, they can share that and show their family and their friends, hey, this is, I'm getting recognized at my work. And that kind of spotlight goes a long way with a lot of people.
Right. Thank you, Adam. And we're going to talk about the positive approach and what this system means to AIM, how we view the system. There are concepts embedded in the system that we've pulled out that we're leveraging with really good success, and we want to share our story with you guys. We think of this system primarily as a scorecard, and we talked a little bit about the metrics that Adam shared. We don't see those metrics. They're big picture metrics that Netradyne's looking at to see how their system's working. What we can see is our opportunities. We see opportunities for improvement throughout our fleet. We're sharing these numbers with our drivers, and the numbers are really what makes the change. And I'm going to make that point in a little while. But our drivers are building really good habits, and they're really evaluating their own performances. We haven't put a ton of effort into the coaching side of things because it's not needed. We're seeing that self-coaching happen. And we have a monthly meeting with some insurance people and, with our executive safety committee, which we just had yesterday. And our insurance consultant's really interested in this self-coaching model. And he's very surprised with the results that we're seeing. So drivers are analyzing their own numbers and they're making improvements, and we're helping them along the way. We've committed to them that we're going to watch every one of their severe videos, which, by the way, there's about one per truck per week on average. And so there's not a ton of video for us to watch. It's mainly a scorecard system. It happens to have a camera. We talk about the camera as a sensor, and that we're collecting the data through the camera, and then we're pushing out meaningful metrics for the drivers to react to. Every minute's analyzed, as Adam mentioned, and the drivers get their score hour by hour. And we'll show you a little bit more about what that looks like. But there's always a positive conversation around that, because so much of what our drivers do is correct. In the industry, we always have believed that 80% of truck crashes were the fault of the other party, and we fully believe that. So there's a lot of good to talk about. The drivers that aren't doing great, they get phone calls. If a driver's getting a 750 score and he's had a lot of hard braking events, he's going to get some coaching. It's going to be focused on the positive first, and then we're going to overlay the Smith system, space cushion driving. Adam mentioned the driver star for slowing down and creating space. That's exactly the approach that we take. We use the Smith system to help the driver react to and learn from the situation rather than having that situation turn into a crash potentially next time. So what kind of data does a coach see? Here's an example of a screenshot of a summary of one driver's day. Recently, this driver scored a 645. You can see it big and bold at the top. And this driver drove for about 3 hours. He's a local delivery driver, so he's got a lot of unloading work to do, not a lot of driving. And he generated 14 alerts, and we see a summary at the bottom of what his score would have been had he fixed those 1-minute events. So I don't need to beat the guy up over the most of the day was good. He was 92% good, but he had a hard turn that dropped his score, substantially, along with his speeding events. And if he'd have cured them both, he'd have been sitting at 958 for the day, which is excellent. So that's the summary data. That's what we can see. It's a lot to talk about. One thing that's present is right in the middle, we see this red, yellow, green scale, and he's placed there at the bottom of the yellow. And you can see the little icon of the person with 645 there on the left side of the scale. That's where he fits in. In addition to that, he sees a ranking in his app, and we'll show you what the app looks like next. What does it look like for the driver? These are a few screenshots from one of our drivers, Doug Jones. And Doug you're going to see a little video clip from Doug. This was his day on February 9th. He scored a 1047. He was ranked number 1. And one thing that we've seen over and over again, when drivers achieve this, when they get a high score and they're ranked number 1, they send me screenshots. They're proud of it. And, I tell them, hey, you crushed it. You killed it today. Great job. It's usually, a lot of times we'll see that I give them the pep talk on Monday, and then on Tuesday, they go out gunning for number 1 and they make it. And then it's a matter of sustaining. Doug's been a master. He's become our definite poster child for improvement. I'm going to share with you a little bit of his scores, but his score at 1047, that's not an everyday thing. It's a lot of work for Doug to get there, but he's been very, very consistent in doing that. We've pushed a lot of drivers his way to learn from him in terms of, how he's achieving this. So these are the stats he sees. And this really drives the performance, because once he sees this, he knows exactly what to work on. This collection of data really is mirrored in the dispatch side or the safety side summary that we saw with Rick Crawford. They see the same things. They're presented a little differently on the different platforms, but they're the same numbers and the same message. This is Doug's score over time. So when we first got Doug's camera put into his truck, I think it was August 30th when he actually got the first driving minutes. But that first month he scored an 814, which is about middle of the road, maybe even on the low end, certainly on the low end for us. But at the time it was a middle of the pack kind of a score. And then sometime during that second month, we got the app turned on and we started showing Doug his results. And you see what happened with his scores. 1,000 is a perfect score. If you don't get any driver stars to get those bonus points, you get 1,000 points in the app. That's what your score is. And you see he's actually 1 month he averaged above that. So Doug's been an excellent example of what is possible in the system. I seem to be stuck here.
Yep.
All right, so now we're going to see a little clip of Doug, and he's going to tell us in his own words, how the system impacts him. And before I start this video up, I just want to lay a little bit of the scenario. We talked about his scores. The thing that Doug did the first month is his average following distance was 3.1 seconds was his average following distance for the month. And the following month it was 3.6, and in December he hit 4.0 for the first time, and he's maintained that 3.9, 4.0 range for average following distance. The system only measures up to 4. So he's maxing it out right at the limit of what it even measures. And Doug recognized that. He made some changes. We had some talks, but it was all because of this app being turned on. So let's see what Doug's got to say.
Jessica Dean with AIM Transportation Solutions. I'm here today with Doug Jones, one of our drivers for our Clopay account. Hi, Doug. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Thank you so much for being here today. So we kind of just wanted to catch up with you a little bit and talk to you about the Netradyne camera system and the corresponding app and how that's been working for you. How would you say, as a driver, the Netradyne system affects your day-to-day?
It has made me so much of a better driver. Eventually, I had bad habits where I was following too closely, and it really, it made me want to be in this. You get points for it. It made me come back and get my following distance corrected, and just all the bad habits. It just worked out.
So that's an incredible way to view the system as kind of something to kind of help guide you to practice better habits in your day-to-day driving. As a driver, would you say that there are any negatives that you see from the system?
The only thing is the lag. Sometimes you get a lag where you'll get a star, which is you get awarded points for doing something correct. And sometimes, the lag is like 3 or 4 hours behind. And sometimes, but really it is the best camera system that I've ever had.
That's great to hear. And I'm happy that we have a system in place that's really working well for you. So overall, as a driver, you would say that you support driving in a truck that has a Netradyne system installed?
I wouldn't go back. Matter of fact, I had to get a spare truck, and I was like, does it have a camera in it? Because it's like security now, and it's the points. I don't want to get behind on my points because I just got a 70-inch flat screen TV for my points. And it's like, wow, this is awesome.
That's really awesome. That's so good to hear. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview with us. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I've sorry about that. So Doug's done a great job. I've talked to Doug a lot of times about the job that he's doing. We're really proud of the work that he's doing. We're proud of the work that all of our drivers are doing. Our scores have gone up tremendously. We're going to get into a little bit of our fleet statistics and a little bit of our averages, and you'll see Adam kind of highlighted the fact that we've seen some tremendous results. And I'm really proud of the job that our safety managers are doing, pushing a safe and positive environment for our drivers, and the drivers are really responding. The biggest thing that we're doing is we're laying that groundwork for them before they get their camera. We're giving them a good look at the system ahead of time to let them know what it measures so that they know what to expect once they get their camera, once they get their app, once everything starts to go live, they're ready to go. So let's get into some of the numbers and results that we're seeing. It's pretty eye-opening. So this is our fleet score. This really speaks to the fact that putting in a camera in a truck, as Adam mentioned, and just letting it go isn't going to change driver behavior. It's not going to change the way people drive just because a camera's there. It's a good exoneration tool if you weren't at fault in a crash, but it's not going to prevent one. Driving safely will. Using the Smith system to manage space will prevent a crash, but just having a camera there is not going to magically manufacture that. A lot of magic happens when you start to show drivers numbers, which is a little counterintuitive, but that is truly what's happened. So prior to that, we had a little more data on this, on what here is a 6-month chart. We've got a little more data, but it's all in that 650 to 700 range. We even had some weeks sub 600, I believe, in that early period before we started talking about really getting our drivers up to speed on what we're looking at and showing them their own numbers. So the results were instant, absolutely overnight. We saw a dramatic improvement in every metric. And I'm going to go into a few more of those now. So when we look at our stop sign compliance, Adam referenced, what did you say, Adam? It was about 98.5% compliant?
Yeah.
98.5. I want to say that this is 0.1 or 0.2% on the negative side. So we're 99.9% compliant with stop signs. And you see where we were when we weren't pushing performance, when we weren't showing drivers what the good was. There was bad, and we had bad, but that instantly went away. We had a few blips, and the blips really stood out. So when we come to the period of December 6th, you see we had a bump. We put a new driver into a camera truck, and he was brand new to the company. We didn't have any experience with him. That gentleman right there ran 50 out of 144 stop signs that we rolled through as a company. And when we get down to the current period, we're rolling through about 20 stop signs a week in total. So the numbers speak for themselves. We're avoiding crashes right here. I can't tell you how many, but this is going to avoid some crashes. Once I corrected the one driver back in December, the numbers have just continued lower every week. Right when I think they can't get lower, they do. And this is traffic light violations. This is the same story. Once we start overlaying the Smith system and we start talking to drivers about how to prevent that situation from occurring, we start to see results. And we are running, I want to say this number is also 0.1 or 0.2%. This one you want to be higher. This is our average following distance as a company, and we've plateaued at 3.6. The system only measures up to 4. I don't think I can go higher than this. I'm going to sure try though. Our drivers are doing a great job maintaining that following distance. This is one of the things that we're currently incenting with our program of these weekly drawings. We're talking about average following distance. I'm asking drivers to get a 3.9 or better, and we're giving them entries into our drawing. And you can go check that out on YouTube. This is speeding. This one's a little bit more muddled. It's a little less clear in terms of a trend. And I think that the reason for that is we've got it really ratcheted down tight. Out of the box, the way the system comes to us set up, it has about a 10-mile-an-hour allowance for speeding, and we've ratcheted it down to 4. So we're allowing 4 miles an hour over, 5 miles an hour over the limit is speeding. And so this is the result that we see. It's still very, very good. We're still below 0.75%. And in the past, we've always used speed gauge, and I'm a big proponent of speed management systems like that. And so we already had speeding under control, and this ratcheted a little tighter yet. So I don't expect this number to change. I expect this to continue to move in a sideways direction, not necessarily up or down. Conclusions. I think the first one, I've made the point that this doesn't, having a camera in your truck and by itself is not going to change anything, but the scorecard approach gives you opportunities to have great conversations with your drivers. It gives you an opportunity to retain drivers. You're going to have drivers that are proud of their performance. They're proud of the work that they do. They're hardworking people. They're dedicated to what they do. They've given up family time, and to tell them that they're doing a great job every day, I don't even need to pick up the phone, and they know it. They know what we think because they know what those numbers tell us and tell them. We have conversations periodically. We may institute a quarterly review kind of a process or a biannual review process to go over their numbers. But so far, we haven't needed to do that. The results obviously speak for themselves. And we also get to keep drivers when they're not at fault. We're missing crashes. And when they have a crash, which I don't have an exoneration story yet, because we have avoided every crash so far. You know, we haven't had an incident with a camera truck yet. But when we do, we know what will happen. We'll have the video that will show that our driver did the right thing, because they're doing the right thing 99.9% of the time, or to Adam's point, they're perfect about 75% of the time. And even the times when they're not perfect, those green zone minutes, that's a high bar. I will tell you that to have a 90% green zone percentage, that's a driver that is on top of his game. What's really moving the needle though is the talk about preventability. I mentioned before that when we run a red light, we go through a red light, we didn't think we could stop. We can talk about preventability of that incident and not judging a crash. And if our driver was, at fault, we don't need to pull out the definition of preventability to mean, did the driver do everything reasonably possible to prevent the incident? We pull that definition out for rolling through a stop sign. It's a whole different ballgame. So then we can coach them through that event and avoid the next incident. And that's our big moving the needle for us. At this point, Jess, I'd like to turn it over to you and over to anybody out there that might have a question.
So thank you, Ron. Particularly those statistics at the end are really telling and, definitely really make you think about how fortunate we are to have such great drivers out there, and seeing these bars continue to trend in the right direction is really exciting stuff. So as Ron mentioned, the floor is now open for questions. You have a couple of options. You can unmute yourself and verbally ask a question, and either Ron or Adam will answer you, whoever's best suited. You can also type your question in the chat function and I'll read it out loud. We actually have one already. How does your system keep track of ever-changing speed limits, for instance, in construction zones?
You want to grab that one, Adam?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, so one of the pieces that Driver Eye is constructed as is an active learning system. So speed is generated by two sources. One is we use an industry database as a baseline, and the database is really good. It does have a small percentage of error. If you've driven through the state of Pennsylvania or some other areas, speed is always changing a little bit. It's always being tweaked by local governments. And what Driver Eye does, we are actually training on 85 to 90 different objects on the road. So we look at speed signs that are posted. We are training on digital display speed signs. We look at advisory speed signs. We look at construction zone speed signs. And we actually take those as inputs into the learning module. So as an example, if you have the database that says you're traveling on a road and the speed says it's 55, and the vehicle is going 60, but you pass a posted speed sign that says 65, the system actually has the intelligence to compare the two numbers and create a stronger confidence of what's happening on the road. So it does take feedback from the driver. So when there's an error in the database, that feedback is put into the machine learning algorithm, and then updates are pushed out to the device about every 4 to 6 weeks. All the devices that are deployed across the United States are all updated universally. So a fleet that could be running in the same territory has some improvement. When Ron and I talk about Ames fleets, they all benefit from those improvements. So it's an ever changing learning system that looks at how different signs are deployed and are changed on highways, and try to create the most confident view for the road for the drivers.
Very good. I had another question pop up directly to me. Oh, and okay. It says, how much driver pushback do we get when we install cameras in their cab? That'd be a Ron question.
We've had very little pushback at all. I don't even know if I'd call it pushback. We get concerned. I take a really open and transparent approach with the drivers. The number one thing that I need to have from the driver is trust. I trust them on the road to do the right decisions, and I want them to trust me that we're making the right decisions to protect them. And this system does that. So I try to sit down personally. I try to sit down with every single driver. If I can't be there, I'll have a safety manager there, or we'll both be there, and we'll have a meeting with the driver. We'll show them the system, preferably in a small group of 2 to 3, so that they feel free to ask questions. We answer every question they have. If I don't have an answer, number one, it's a really tough question because I know the system really well, but I know that I can get an answer. Adam's team's really responsive to get those answers to me. Sometimes I'll connect their people at Netradyne directly with our driver and get them the answer so that they understand the system. So once they understand the system flawlessly, they go right into their truck knowing what's going to happen, and we get no concerns. A big point, though, to make about driver pushback, and what I've heard from other fleets that have camera systems deployed is they typically get 10 to 20% of their drivers that don't want the camera in their truck when they have the inward lens turned on. We have the inward lens turned off. I can use this system however I want to use it. I haven't even deployed the coaching yet. So I don't have the intrusive things or the things that drivers might think are intrusive, which would be the audible coaching and the inward camera. I have those off, and we allow them to keep the lens cap on that inward lens just to give them peace of mind that we're not spying on them.
Very good. So I have another question that popped up. What is the best approach to adopting Netradyne within my fleet? This is an Adam question, I believe.
So maybe I'm going to, maybe Ron, you and I can 1-2 on this one. And I know we were talking about this earlier. I think one of the elements that I've seen the most success fleets having is one is transparency. To what Ron just brought up is tell them what you're going to do, what your objectives are, what you're looking for, what you're tracking, what you're measuring, what's important to the fleet and why, right? So why does it matter? We want you to be safer because it reduces, the expense I have to pay out. And if I have more money, then I have resources for other things. So that's a macro conversation. But I would suggest that if a fleet is setting out and starting with video, is to lean into the positive, right? To reinforce the behavior that you want so other drivers can emulate to that and feel connected to that. So if you have a driver who has a driver star or has a week of driving where they have a lot of green minutes, promote that and share that with your drivers so they feel connected to that euphoric feeling of positive performance versus, the worst thing to do is you put cameras out there and a week later, you're terminating 3 drivers and now everyone's running scared. So I think there's this great opportunity to be transparent and team on the positive very early. And then once you have buy-in to the program and drivers, you saw Doug on the video, he may never drive a vehicle that doesn't have a camera again. At that point, it's an easier conversation to say, Doug, look, as a KPI, as a goal for the company, we want to be at 100% stop sign compliant. Okay, now you can set, very aspirational goals for the fleet, which drive out risk and lower unsafe driving performance. So I would suggest, to Ron's point and what he shared, being transparent and leaning into the positive upfront definitely brings drivers closely connected to the why. Why are we doing this? And why is it important to me?
One other thing I'd like to just mention about driver stars, and I agree totally, and that's exactly the approach that we've taken. We're very hands-off with the system when it comes to the drivers. We give them their videos when there's a severe video that we think will benefit them viewing. If we think there's an opportunity to improve, we share the video with the driver. We share several hundred videos a week with the drivers. Sometimes we share less than severe videos, just so they see, because they don't have severe issues to share. But one thing that does happen is we reinforce the positive, even in those hard braking events, for example. We've had numerous instances of, somebody pulled out in front of me and driver had a hard braking event, like Adam mentioned earlier in the presentation, with a pedestrian. That's a situation where our safety managers actually trigger a driver star for that event. So we take away the negative points associated with that, the punitive part of the hard braking event, and we turn it into a positive, even on their scorecard. And once we get to the point where we're actually awarding a regular safety bonus on a regular interval for those points, that's actually putting dollars in their pockets. And that's the practice, and that's the expectation that we expect to continue. We are going to hold ourselves accountable to manage their scorecard, just like we ask them to manage their own scorecards. And I think that with that approach, I think that's a really good rollout structure. And the tagline that I used in a lot of the driver meetings was, if you give me a 900 score every day, I won't bother you. A lot of drivers just don't want to receive coaching. They are truck drivers because they want to be left alone in many cases, especially the over-the-road crew. So we're pretty hands-off with that, and I think that building trust is really the key to getting their compliance.
Absolutely. Got another question pop up. Any plans to incorporate backing into the Netradyne platform?
Yeah, so the Driver Eye product has a option called Driver Eye Hub, And Driver Eye Hub allows for up to four auxiliary cameras to be added to the view. So you can, if you have the D430, you can have 8 views. The D210, you can have 6 views. As an example, we have a fleet that runs that hauls fuel. So they have tankers. They have 4 views inside the cab. So 1 outside, 2 peripherals, 1 at the driver. They added 2 auxiliary cameras, both located underneath the door mirrors. So they have views following to the sides of the tractor trailer. They have a camera that's on the back of the trailer. And we actually, in that case, installed a driver monitor. So the driver now has a view for activity that happens, either backing or getting rear-ended. And then ironically, the 8th view is mounted right above the fuel pumps on the tanker, where they're actually keeping record of non-driving workflow, where drivers are outside the vehicle, either loading or unloading, and they want to have some video capture of those events for any kind of inquiries that come later on. So in terms of backing, it's something that's available today that we could easily facilitate. It's just a matter of mechanical engineering. If it's a straight truck or a van or SUV, super easy because it's all one vehicle. If it's a tractor trailer, we just need to work the power to the camera through the 9-pin.
Very good. I don't see any other questions. So I just want to say in closing, thank you so much to Adam and to the Netradyne team for supporting us at AIM in our mission to be the safest fleet out there. And we appreciate you taking the time today to speak to us and our customers and other members of the transportation community that have logged on today. Staffing drivers, maintaining a fleet of vehicles, living with the risk of a nuclear verdict hanging over your head is a lot. AIM Integrated Logistics Division relieves you of those burdens. So if you have any interest in hearing more about what dedicated contract carriage at AIM looks like, please email or call me after this video, and I'm happy to talk to you about it a little bit. We appreciate your time today. Huge thank you to Ron and to Adam both. You both really nailed it. So thank you so much. And this is one of a 3-part series. We're going to have 2 more parts coming up, about one focusing on collision avoidance and one on ELD. So we hope you can join us for the other 2 parts of that series. Me and Ron will both be with you for that. So thank you, Adam. Thank you all. Thank you, Ron. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.